Hello?
Hi, thanks for joining me today.
Yeah, my pleasure.
So we'll get started. First, we'll do introductions. I'll go first. So I'm Ivanka, a high school student who's really passionate about sustainability and climate change, especially methane emissions. So I first got interested in methane when I did my research projects at Cornell and the USDA. And that's also why I started this initiative, Methane Matters. So I do this podcast series, and I also wrote this book, which is now on Amazon. And I started Methane Matters to educate people on methane emissions, their impact, and how to mitigate them. And this is my 5th podcast in the series, so very exciting. And I'm super excited to have you with me today.
Well, thank you. Thank you for inviting me there. I'm glad to be here, and I'm Ermias Kebreab, professor of animal science at the University of California, Davis, and most of my work involves reducing methane emissions from livestock, particularly from dairy cattle.
Thank you. Okay, so the first question I have is, what's your background and a little bit of your education?
Background, I grew up in Eritrea and in East Africa, and I studied biology, chemistry, mathematics, and I did my master's and PhD at the University of Reading in the UK, and I worked there in integrative biology, basically developing some mathematical models to understand biological systems. And then from there on, I continued to work at University of Reading as well as a postdoc, and then moved to Canada for a few years, and then in the US for the last 15 years.
Okay, so what got you interested in methane specifically?
Yeah, at the beginning, it was really looking into methane as an energy to try to account for the energy of the animal, right? So we're looking into developing nutritional tools so that we can understand what is the animal requirement, and as part of the requirement, we're looking into where does energy go once the animal is eating the feed. We look at into energy and how it's partitioned. So you can attribute some of the energy being utilized for the various functions, and those reactions will produce heat. So you see a lot of heat production happening. But another way to lose energy is through methane emissions. So at the beginning, we were looking into that to account for the energy balance of animals, basically, particularly dairy cattle, and looking into how much of the feed is converted into product. And as part of that, you have to account the energy losses through methane as well. And so that's how it kind of started the looking into methane, and then it kind of evolved as the environmental issues became more and more important and more prominent. Then we started looking into methane more deeply and trying to understand what are the factors that are involved in methane production, and how does it what factors will make it increase or decrease, looking into just dietary factors at the time. And so trying to use dietary means to try to reduce methane emissions. So that's how sort of the initial idea was, from energy balance into more targeted look into how methane works. How do you account for it? We developed some mathematical models to predict methane emissions and the factors associated with it.
Okay, that's interesting. So can you tell me about some of the projects you're doing right now?
Right now, we're doing a couple of projects. One is looking into using a biotechnology, CRISPR specifically, to try to identify some of the genes involved in methanogenesis and potentially edit them out, so that we can have at a microbiome level methanogens that do not contain this ability to produce methane. And so that's a very exciting project that we're doing at the moment. It's a 7-year project. We are only 2 years into the 7-year project, so to come. And so far, we have had some interesting results, but we continue to work on that. And the other thing we're doing is looking into feed additive to try to reduce methane emissions, and there's an ongoing research at the moment. So early indications are that this specific additive we are working on reduces emissions probably about 30% or more. But again, it's very early days, but we hope to see that this is going to be um, uh, at least 30%, if not more, emission from the project we're doing. So there are several things we do practically. So this is uncontrolled experiments. We also develop life cycle assessments, looking into a production system and where does it make sense to make an intervention. So yeah, with life cycle assessments, developing mechanistic models to again try to figure out um, methane is being produced and what are the levers that will control the amount of emission that's coming on. So basically looking into this methane as directly reducing it, inhibiting it, or editing it out, and then predicting methane and performing life cycle assessments.
Okay, that's really cool. So you did research on seaweed as a feed additive. Can you talk a little bit more about that?
Yeah, so as a feed additive, we've uh, we've done this work 2018, 2019, where we used the seaweed from Australia and fed dairy cattle at the beginning, and we saw about 60% reduction in emissions at the time in dairy cattle, and then that's continued with another experiments with beef cattle, and the beef cattle reduced emissions. We saw about 80% or so. Um, yeah, and then we had another research that we've done in Montana, where we used pasture-based animals, and we've seen about 40% on average, depending on how the animals like the seaweed. Some of them like it and they eat a lot. Some of them not so much. So those who ate it, we've seen up to 80-90% reduction. But those who don't, obviously, we have a 10-20% reduction. So, but on average, we saw about 40% reduction in emissions under pasture management. And then we are continuing to right now into the use of seaweed as early life intervention, which means you start the seaweed very early in life, just a few days after they're born until they are weaned, and then you kind of stop after they are weaned. And we are hoping to see that this early life intervention continues to show reduction in emissions for the rest of their lives. So that's an active project going on right now. So we don't have complete results, but the hope is that we will see a continuation in emissions.
Interesting. Okay, so there are many technologies like CRISPR and AI. So are you using any of those to further your research? And can you explain a little bit more?
Yeah, so the CRISPR is the one that I already mentioned, and we're using CRISPR to edit out methanogenesis. But the AI, we're not using directly for methane reduction. What we are using AI for is to kind of integrate some results, recommendations, and translation in ration formulation software. So we're developing a ration formulation software for low-income and middle-income countries, so that they can help them improve or increase their productivity and indirectly reduce the methane intensity per kilogram of milk they're producing. The methane would be lower. So we're using then AI to translate into different languages. We're working in Southeast Asia, South and Southeast Asia, so including India, um, Vietnam, Thailand, Indonesia, and the Philippines. And obviously, they have different languages, even within country. There's a lot of different type of languages, and so instead of manually developing the software as we have done before in different languages, now AI is good enough to be able to understand the context and then be able to translate it right away. So we are building this kind of tools so that people can use this decision support tools in their own languages.
Okay. Yeah, that's good. What projects are you doing specifically in those countries?
It's basically to increase the productivity of dairy cattle. So this is a dairy
Okay.
focused project, and so we are it's the same project across all countries. We are building the database, the feed database for the country. So we develop a national database for the country, and then we develop the software so that we can use the software with the national database to then come up with recommendations for dairy farmers to use in order to increase their productivity as well as their bottom line also, because this is a list cost formulation. And so we take into consideration the cost of the feed. And so we come up with a recommendation that is profitable for the farmer, as productive, and reduce the methane intensity in the region.
Yeah, that's really cool. Do you have any future projects that you're thinking of doing?
Uh, yeah, I mean, we were trying to see if different type of technologies can be stacked up and we can get more emissions. We may be involved in doing some work on vaccines, for example, anti-methanogenic vaccines. Um, so you can stack that with feed additives. So vaccines work different way, additives work in a different way. So it's possible by stacking up different technologies, you might be able to get over 50% reduction of emissions. And some of them themselves, you can get to 95%, but it may not be easy to get approval. Um, but yeah, so that's the kind of work we're going to be doing, is probably more stacking up of this. We probably engaged in trials with vaccines. And then continue to do more work on additives and then with the CRISPR as well.
Okay.
Yeah.
And then I have one last question. What advice do you have for high schoolers and people like me who are interested in this space?
I think it's great to engage in this and really spread the idea of what is at stake, right? So if climate change is not dealt with and we can reduce, or we can have mitigation, then we'll be in a much worse situation than we are now. And methane being one of those gases that is highly effective in trapping heat. Reducing methane would help us, or give us a little bit more time to reduce carbon dioxide as well, because the reduction of methane now, within 10 years, we will be able to feel the effect of that, while carbon dioxide is going to be in the millennia. So it's a very urgent action needed for methane. It is something that we can do. We have technologies. We are developing more and more technologies. So I think it'd be good to engage in and communicating to people that this is a very important thing that we need to do in order to have a better world, and to leave the world in a better situation than we found it.
Yeah, that's what I'm trying to do with this initiative. So thanks.
Right.
Yeah, that's all I had.
Yeah.
Thanks
Thank you
for
for doing
joining me
this.
today.
No, thank you for doing this. I mean, this is very exceptional. So congratulations on working on this and getting the word out.
Thanks. Yeah, it was really fun talking to you.
Yeah, me too. Have a
Yeah,
good day.
thanks, you too.
Okay, bye.
Bye.